Alright, back again, and now it's time to prep for painting. By this point, all your parts should be basically dry. Ideally, if there's a lot of little nooks and crannies, you might want to turn your parts a couple times just to make sure all the water's able to get absorbed by any paper towels and just generally is dry. Alright, now when getting ready for painting, ideally you want to make something like these. I use basically alligator clips and a spare piece of excess sprue tree. It's cheap and does a really great job of holding parts together. Now, when getting parts on these things, ideally you want to find places such as this little nub here that are generally places where it aren't going to be seen on the finished kit. Since you don't really care about those parts, you can use just clamp on the alligator clip and you're ready to go. Now for some parts, such as this headpiece, there's no real place you can really do that, but there is a nice little recessed area that's not going to be seen. So for that we use just your general sticky tack. Basically just get a glob of it and try as best you can to get it in there and avoid any areas that will be seen. And then all you do is just stick the top in and it's ready to go. Now for more complicated parts, such as this headpiece, again, no real place, but does have nice little hole there, and generally try and improvise as much as you can. Sometimes, unfortunately, you just have to do a part in multiple painting steps. And yeah, so now for getting your paint ready. Alright, so now it's finally time to get ready to paint. So, first step in painting is basically priming. For that, I'm using Mr. Surfacer. And with all paints, generally you need to shake them up or stir them. It's said with acrylics you shouldn't do this, but in my experience, I've never had a problem with what's called paint separation, where basically the paint separates from the thinner end. Yeah, just basically, you're technically not supposed to do it, though I've never had a problem with it. So, got my paint shooken up. Pop off the secondary lid for this thing. There we go. Now, using an eyedropper, you're going to want to transfer just enough paint to do the job that you need to do. Alright. Now once you've finished with your dropper, you want to try and get as much paint back out of it so as to minimize the amount of waste. Then just dip it in a jar filled with thinner, give it a couple squirts through, and then leave it filled, and then come back to it after you're done painting. As by that point, it'll have basically had enough time just to sort of sit in there and thin out and pull out a lot of the excess paint and such, so as to allow it to be ready for next time you need it. Alright, next step is thinning. In general, you want to use the thinner specific to the brand of paint you're using, and you also want to use a dedicated eyedropper. Again, just as you want to only use that dropper for thinner, so as to minimize any potential for mixing of unwanted colors and the like. Now, the thinning ratio you use will vary based on type of paint you're using. For enamels, I use a 3:2 ratio, or 3 paint to 2 parts thinner. For acrylics, I use the 1:1, so you're mixing the same amount of thinner with the same amount of paint. And for at least the Mr. Color paints, I use a 5:6 ratio, as I found that works best. As if you don't, I found it doesn't go out. It just doesn't airbrush well. With regards to the Alclad paints, they're pre-thin, so you don't need to thin them at all. You just load up your airbrush and shoot. Alright, so now that got my airbrush ready to go, I'm going to head out to where I do my painting, and I'll show you how to paint in the next video.